All right, looks like we are live. All right, so I'll start off with the formalities. Let me see. I'm Norm Corbin. I'm the chair of the Northborough Historic District Commission. This open meeting of the commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of May 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. As such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the Historic District Commission are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the commission to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link, Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. All right, so let's see. Let me silence my phone. Do that. So I'll start to make sure, see who's here. So give me a yell out that you're here. Brian Smith.
I'm here.
Good. Brian Swanson.
Here.
Bob Light.
Here.
Leslie.
I'm here.
Millie.
Here.
Bruce.
Here.
And Mike DeShano. You're muted. I can see you're here, but you are muted. There we go. We're good to go. And then and Becca is working with us this evening. Thank you, Becca. So we go right to the agenda. Has everybody taken a look at Bruce's meeting minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Does anyone have any comments or corrections for the minutes?
The only thing I would comment on is when addressing a member is to use the first and last name, not just the first name in the notes.
Yeah. Good point.
That's probably the right thing to do. Is that something you can handle for us, Bruce? Bruce, yeah? You know everybody's last name?
Oh, sure. Yep. You want me to amend the current set of meeting minutes or just going forward?
I think going forward's fine.
Right.
Sounds good. All right. Any other comments on the meeting minutes?
They look good.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from January 21st, 2021.
Anybody second?
Second,
Who is that?
Brian
Bruce?
Smith.
Brian. Thanks, Brian. So I got to do the roll call thing to see if we're okay. So, yay or nay? Brian Smith.
Present,
How about a yay or a nay?
yay.
Thanks. Brian Swanson.
Approved.
Bob.
Yay, if I can vote.
Oh, that's right. You could. I'm sorry about that. Leslie.
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't there.
Thank you. Millie.
I'm going for a yay.
Bruce.
Yay.
Michael.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We're good to go. Thank you.
You.
All right, just roll down the agenda. Prior CPA request. The Brigham Street Burial Ground interpretive sign. I've passed the information on that we had to Scott, the DPW director, and he's going to meet this week with the cemetery commission to get approval for what we've done. When I get their feedback, then I'm going to incorporate all the little changes we made and discussed last month and get them, get a final version at the company expose for us to review next month. So that's where that stands.
Okay.
All right.
I did review the tape, and I appreciated all the Leslie channeling that was going on.
See, you weren't missed.
What would Leslie do?
Yeah. So now we're on the Howard Street Burial Ground interpretive sign. I sent it out to for a quote from Expose. I haven't got the quote back yet. And we also had a quote from about a year ago from an online corporation to build that sign for us. So I'm waiting back for the quote, and then we can work out all the gory details with spellings and commas, but I really wanted to get the quote moving along.
Okay.
The Howard Street Cemetery National Register. I spoke with the woman who's writing who's putting together the nomination documentation. She's working on it, but she's looking at an April or May time frame by time she submits it. So we won't really hear anything from her till end of April, beginning of May. And when she pulls that together and submits it to the Mass Historical Commission. So that's the status, and then that's the timing for that. The preservation plan. I did start writing, nothing that I want anybody to see, especially Leslie. Don't want you to see this, the first draft. It's really being, when I looked at the master plan, really our preservation plan is going to be driven by the master plan. And the master plan gave a lot of generalities, like put more houses on the National Register and get more historic districts. And what I'm going to add to that is the comments that we've made over the years of which particular properties we think should be focused on. So the master plan will drive the general, what we want to do, and then we'll put in the specifics from the work we've put together over the last few years. Keep in mind, just the master plan, the historic preservation part of the master plan was written by us. Just remember that everything that's on the master plan was input that we gave. So it's not, just so everybody appreciates it, we're kind of telling ourselves what to do. All right. So then, any questions on the preservation plan yet? All right. Now, Mike has been looking into more information regarding the archaeological sites in Northborough. So Mike, I turn it over to you to let people know what you've been digging up and who have you been speaking with?
Sure. I have contacted 3 companies. They were referenced by the folks from the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and they're all interested in doing the work. They've all directed me in various ways to review some of their projects, and some of them have sent me some of their documents, and I've gone through some of that. And so they're kind of waiting for us, I guess, to do something. And I would say at this point, we probably need to think about what we want to do here. We could hire, put together an RFP, a scope of work, get some funding, submit it to these folks and perhaps even more, get them to come in and do what was described by Brona Simon in her letter to us as a site-wide reconnaissance survey. of which these three companies have done that work. And so once we put together a package, send it out, get some quotes, get some funding, they'll then kick in and do the work. And then that basically will give us a report deliverable from them describing the sites and, where they are. And also perhaps like GIS layers that we would incorporate in the town's GIS for essentially planning purposes. And their deliverable would identify current known sensitive areas and, possible areas that they suspect might have some archaeological sites, so that the intent would be in the future, if say, for example, a developer wants to do a subdivision in an area, the planning board could, get that information pretty quickly through the GIS, the town GIS, and request or in some cases, I guess, if the zoning laws are strong enough, require them to do more investigative work before they start, doing site work. And the whole idea here is to sort of identify these locations and collect whatever artifacts are remaining out there before they get destroyed. So that's probably the gold standard of what could happen. The other option would be something less intensive as that. I have the package here in front of me that we got from Brona Simon, who is the state archaeologist, and it includes a copy of all of the information that they have. And another alternative would be to, give this to Kathy Julbert, the town planner, and then, she would use this information to more or less do the same thing, I guess. If, say, a developer came along and wanted to do something, she could, reference these kind of maps. So, I mean, I guess in my thinking, it might be a topic for discussion either today or another time, where we, as a group, talk about what we want to do, how far we want to take this. There is some pretty impressive reports that have been done. I have one from Groton that was done by one of these contractors, and another one from North Attleboro. And the depth and detail of what they uncover is pretty impressive to me. A lot of history of the town, a lot of information about the Native American peoples that lived here. It's quite a scholarly document, I must say. So, that's.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. I pretty much done.
So just to make sure we're all on the same page. The intent here is, right now, it appears that the database that the Massachusetts Historical Commission has on Native American sites in the town were all through happenstance. It wasn't like there was a effort, and this, I'm pretty sure on this, but we need to confirm that with Town Hall. There doesn't appear to be an effort that actually looked through the whole town to see what areas of the town might be more apt to have Native American
Influence.
Native American, I can't think of the word, but findings, how about that? So that's one of the reasons to look at it. It's something, I know these are costly. Mike, you didn't mention the price ranges, but if you don't mind, it's between $25,000 and $35,000. These are extensive studies. But Mike also recognized and pointed out that we could have half of that paid for by the state. There's a program to do these surveys, so it cuts the price from 30 grand to 15 grand, which is definitely a good thing. So I kind of see it as a way of, should we look at the town as a whole rather than by happenstance? But I think we need to really talk to the planning department, to Kathy Julbert, to understand what the town already knows, how they feel if this is an important thing for them, because we're gonna have to get some backing. Anything that's that kind of money, we're gonna have to get some serious backing from other town groups, even the planning board that says this is a really good thing to do, because CPA funds have to be, you know, kind of justified. The other thing I wanted to make a note is the timing on everything. This is actually could be good timing for us. And Mike, you keep in mind when you speak with these people, if we're going for CPA funding, we're going for CPA funding that would, in best case, be available July 1st, 2022. So a year and a half from now. So anybody who puts together prices and stuff, they have to recognize it's not for next year, it's for July 2022.
Mhm.
So the good thing is we're giving ourselves quite a bit of time to think this through and see if this is the right thing to do. And if it is, you know, we can also look up the details for the grant funding. I think it's an annual grant fund from Mass Historical Commission for surveys. And they just, I think it's an annual, and the last one was just due like 10 days ago. So it appears it's a March timeframe. So we have to sequence our dates.
I might add, Norm, you know, the letter we got from Brona Simon, the state archaeologist, I think, to me, is a pretty strong recommendation that we do this survey. And I think her recommendation is partly because there's 20 of these sites already in Northborough that have been identified. And it turns out she in her earlier career actually did some of these digs in Northborough. So it seems to me, as after reading the letter and kind of looking through what she sent us, that I would my takeaway is that she thinks it's worth kind of doing this. That there's enough.
And that would be one person that supports it. And then, like I said, we have to get the planning board to support it and the planning department to support it, because the CPA is generally critical of anything that's considered to be a study. It requires more justification. Keep in mind that it was a challenge to get the $7,000 to have the Howard Street Cemetery put on the National Register. So we just have to get our ducks in a row. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying we just have to convince quite a few people to stand behind us to support it.
So I wonder,
Yeah, I think that there might be some pushback that people may think, you know, that this kind of information is not particularly that valuable, considering it might dissuade, say, a large project to come into town, which would generate revenue and jobs and all that good stuff. So I think there's kind of the scale of, you know, do you want to put more restrictions on somebody that might decide not to do some kind of development that would be helpful for tax purposes, you know, to increase our tax bases here in town, versus you know, coming up with some historical information that is valuable, but, you know, how much do you want to spend tracking this stuff down? Because essentially a lot of the stuff that I've looked at, you know, you end up with like arrowheads and, you know, things like they call like scrape, you know, little granite scraping things. It's not, I mean, it's interesting and all that good stuff, but I mean, it's sort of something you might look at on a Sunday afternoon in a museum. And, you know, I guess I'm bringing it up only because I thought about, well, doing all this effort and you end up with, you know, I'm not sure what the real super value is. It's kind of valuable, but how valuable, I guess, would be the question.
I wonder too, if does, you know, would something like this need to go hand in hand with you know, any kind of additional zoning bylaws or something that put a little teeth around it, right? I mean, it's one thing to know, but if there's nothing legally associated with it, then the planning board doesn't have, it seems to me, the planning board doesn't have much to go on if somebody wants to develop that site, right? So it seems to me that it needs to be like sort of a multifaceted thing, which I think, by the way, I think this, it would be valuable to know. It would also be valuable to know whether, how many of those sites have actually been disrupted already versus how many might still be sort of intact.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think all of my discussions with all the folks that I've spoken to have an endpoint pretty much exactly what you were saying, is that, this kind of stuff goes hand in hand with developing a plan, a bylaw plan, which apparently Northborough does have something on the books right now that describes protecting these types of sites, which I couldn't really find it, but it was in one of the reports I saw. Yeah, that would be the thing. You adopt a bylaw that requires people to do this kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, there is already in the state a requirement that if you have state-funded, a project that's funded by the state or federal, like the filtration plant that was put in for MWRA, you are required to fulfill a what's called a project notification form, and you submit that to the Mass Historical Commission, and they make a determination whether or not you have to do this archaeological study. And that, as a matter of fact, is one of the reasons why we have identified many of the sites that we have already, because that was done and yielded quite a bit of information. As a matter of fact, Brona was one of the archaeologists that did that work. So that could then, I guess that's a state mandate, and we could, along that same line of thinking, adopt a townwide bylaw that pretty much does the same thing for non-federally funded or non-state funded projects. Like for if, we're getting a lot of pressure from these box stores to build these large warehouses down in along Bartlett Street, and that could end up being an application where you would require them, before they start excavating, to make some effort to see if they can uncover some of these different sites. It's not that it would stop them from doing that. I think the idea is you identify what it is and you gather whatever information you can prior to them doing it, and then you incorporate that into part of the historical understanding of what went on in the town.
Millie, earlier today, I found a document on the town's website, and it's called, something's called OSRD, Open Space Residential Design Document. It's chapter 701 under special regulations. This is a bylaw for the town. And that's the only place I could find the word. When I searched it, it says, I'm going to read this sentence to you. The purpose of the Open Space Residential Design Bylaw is to protect open space, agriculture, forestry lands, view sheds, wildlife habitat, corridors, wetlands, water resources, and historical and archaeological resources. And it's a 20-page document that I looked through, and it doesn't tell me anything about how that all works for archaeological sites. So I'm just wondering now that on the planning board, I know you're brand new to the planning board, do you know of any other laws or things in the town that have to do with archaeological sites?
I haven't yet since I've been on, but we do have some projects that have had to submit to the Mass Historical Commission for basically either recommendations or for historical, archaeological approval.
Huh,
So I don't know exactly what triggered that, and I actually think it might be what Mike said, was that it was a project that involves state structures. So I think that's an automatic trigger. I don't know, Leslie, do you know anything about that from zoning or?
Don't.
Okay, so I think that's what automatically triggered that, was that it was a state easement that was being used.
so for something that's recent, so for the developments that have been going on Bartlett Street, just in the last 3 years, do we know offhand, was there any requirement that there was some kind of evaluation done?
No, I believe that was the only one, that was the one, there was one of those that was triggered, that triggered but it was the most recent one that did. The others have not, as far as I can see. I've looked back in some of their records and haven't seen anything
No.
from the Massachusetts Historical Commission regarding any archaeological findings or concerns, except for the most recent one. So I don't know what triggered it, other than maybe they went over, they're looking to go over the easement.
Oh, over the aqueduct? Is that the one that's going over the aqueduct? That could-
Mhm.
Is it something, I don't think any of us have seen that document. It would be interesting to see what it looks like, if that's something you could find a way to forward to us.
Yeah, I can probably pass that along. It was a pretty, concise and summarized report, but yeah, I can pass that along.
Because my question would be, how come we haven't seen it?
I agree. Yeah. And that's kind of, to Mike's point, trying to figure out, where does the process get started and how? And how do we, when do we come in along the way? How do we not know that type of stuff? As far as I know, it has never been triggered on any of those, except for this most recent one in Bartlett.
Mike, I'm wondering if you could just send a short email to Kathy Jubert, and just ask her if the town has a policy, because sometimes the policies are buried somewhere. Does she know that the town has a policy that requires development to look at an architectural evaluation? I keep saying architectural, I mean
Yeah,
archaeological.
well, I did CC her on the stuff that I sent you too. so-
Right, yeah, I saw you did that. But maybe just ask her a simple question
Okay.
just regarding,
Yeah,
Process.
because I went to the town code and I just put in, the word archaeological. Well, I got all these other A words in my head. Archaeological site, and that's the only document that popped up with that word in it. Like, that seems funny.
the piece that I sent you, Norm, that referenced Northborough's bylaw
Yeah.
about this came from the North Attleboro document. And I think it was sort of in the appendix where they went through town by town to see, what other towns have done as far as taking, adopting bylaws to protect these sites. And Northborough was mentioned, and it was mentioned that they do have some subdivision. I think it was in section 10 or something like that.
Yep.
Where they had a subdivision section that required, some kind of study. The interesting thing is the last sentence of that reference says something to the effect, it's not really it's not really used, which I thought was kind of funny. Because you have it on the books, but then they say they don't really use it. So, it kind of struck me.
Well, it's time to revisit then.
Well, maybe that's an interesting angle. I mean, if it's already on the books, then maybe that's
Yeah.
lever for actually, being able to do this and pushing this forward.
Yeah, I think that's what we're sort of trying to get to the bottom of, is if it's on the books, we should be aware of it and understand it. And then we should be able to find it, because I can't, Norm couldn't find it. I couldn't find it, but
So Mike, is that something you can share
Oh,
with us?
absolutely. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. I should have sent it to the group. I just kind of sent it to Norm just to kind of, you know, as a
bounce back, yeah,
sort of a starting point.
okay.
I mean, I don't know how much you guys want to get bogged down with this kind of stuff. I'll be happy to forward everything to you folks, but,
I would not mind.
okay. I just don't want to bombard people with emails and stuff.
I know, that's my job.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
Anything else? Any, on that topic?
Well, I guess I would, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of ask if, what, maybe if we got a minute, what people's thoughts are, is how far we should pursue this, or, what's the next step, or what? Because at this point, I'm not sure what my charter is on this here.
I'll stick my neck out. I'm thoroughly in favor of going forward with this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would pursue it too.
Okay.
Yep, I would agree. I think it's worth looking into.
I would just want to make sure we understood what the town already has in place before we
Yep.
go too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a wise thing to do.
But Mike, whatever you've done so far has been perfect. I mean, you're
Fantastic.
tapping into the right
Absolutely.
people and asking the right questions. It's really been very informative.
So, do you want me to formulate some kind of a scope, or
Yeah,
do you want to talk to Kathy first, or do you want to talk about it at another time, or what?
I'd like to recommend we start with Kathy. Just
Okay.
see what we have before we do too much, in case there's something that is in the books and we're not recognizing. And also,
Did you have a chance to look over that scope that I had sent you, Norm?
yeah, I did. You send me, yes, I did get that.
It was the scope of work that they used at North Attleboro that was seemingly, we could more or less lift it and, massage it a little bit, but
Let me
seems like it-
reread it in a different light, in the sense I'll take another look at it. But send it to
Okay.
the group, just
Okay.
everybody get an idea of what this type of project entails. I think that would be a good idea, just to gain everybody to have a feeling for it.
I very much like the idea, since we have, a really great GIS platform. I very much like the idea of enhancing it with this information if it's not already on it. And I think, ultimately that kind of information on a GIS platform seems to be a perfect fit. I mean, that's what GIS
Yeah.
in my mind is really for.
Mhm.
And I think it could really help. And then the other part of that is, as we talked, is if we don't have a strong, bylaw that requires this kind of stuff, then either we could adopt a new one or enhance the one we have, or kind of become more familiar with what triggers, this kind of stuff.
At a minimum, I think it adds to the richness of what we know about the town.
Yeah, I'm telling you, some of these documents that I've looked through are pretty impressive. I mean, I don't know, maybe Northborough has something like this, but this thing is, I mean, it's like a scholarly document from almost at the point of where you could, put a hard cover on it and be a book about an interesting aspect of the town. It's really filled with, it's really filled with tremendous history. The Groton thing talks about, the conflicts with various Indians, and they mention the tribes by name, and they talk about the people that were abducted and where they ended up and who rescued them and what year. And I mean, it's all, the King Philip War they talk about. And then there's another one after that called the Queen Anne War. And we're talking like 1675 here. They had to build like fortresses out there because they were attacked so many times. And
Hmm.
I mean, it's really, I found myself drawn in pretty interesting with the story. You know, I mean, it's like you're reading almost like a fictional work, but it's real.
So you're saying Grafton did this or North Grafton?
Not Groton,
Groton.
but
Okay.
Groton has one that I found pretty interesting. And then there's another one, North Attleboro had one that was done. It was quite good as well. And I guess there's a bunch of towns that Concord has. I haven't seen it or read it, but it's supposedly phenomenal. And you can imagine what kind of history is in Concord.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, Northborough was part of that whole Revolutionary War era. And, you know, I think, you know,
Yeah.
we should be aware and adoptive of our place in that era. At least, you know, it seems like this whole area of the United States has a rich history, and it gets some press. But I'll tell you, if you looked at that Groton thing, you know, it's pretty good. It was pretty good summary.
So is that one of those secret documents you guys have?
No. The secret documents are just the documents that we got from the Mass Historic Commission.
Okay.
And it's just essentially a summary, a couple maps that locate the sites that they know of, the 20 sites that they know of.
Right.
And the only reason it's restricted is because they just don't want people to go out there and start digging all this stuff up.
Right.
No, these documents were prepared as deliverables following something like what we were talking about, a scope of work. And these historical groups go through and they, as part of their deliverable to us, do this discussion on the history of the town and integrate a lot of the sites that they know of with the history and the background of why the sites are there and how they developed. And it was really a pretty good thing. I have to admit, it captured me. No pun intended.
Is it, do you have it as a paper copy or as an electronic?
It's a
copy?
PDF. They have two versions of these documents. One version is the restricted version that locates all the sites.
Right.
And then the version that they gave me, the public version. And it's, you know, one of them is like 400 and some odd pages. Another one is, I don't know,
Wow.
a couple hundred pages and stuff. But it's got great graphics, the pictures, the maps, you know, I mean, it's just that they go out and they take photographs of what these different, you know, talk about the mills, how the colonists, you know, would make money. They would, in Grafton, they had I don't know, some mines where they would mine some, I forgot what the stuff was, but they'd dig stuff up and they'd use it in some way. And then they, you know, had pictures of the foundations of these old mills that were out in the woods, middle of the woods.
So is it a PDF you could forward?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can send them to everybody if you want. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
I would like that.
they're kind of hefty documents, so I'll have to I'll try, and if they don't go through, it's just because the size limits.
Yeah.
I can chop it down. One of them I had to she had to give me her name was Deborah Cox, awfully nice. I had to get access to their what do you call it? Their
The file sharing?
Their file.
yeah,
share.
their network, and because they couldn't. The size of the document's too big to send email,
Okay.
so I had to download it through their
Server.
yeah,
A lot of times Dropbox would work for that if you have a Dropbox.
right.
So there's a
Yeah.
variety. If it's a pain in the neck, I wouldn't. Don't spend too
Well,
much
you know,
time.
what I'll do is I'll try it. I'll try it. I'll send it to you as a test, a beta version, Norm, and if that works, then I'll send it out. But I can get something out. I mean, I'll just chop the document in half or send it in pieces or something like that.
All right. Bob and Brian Swanson, you have any comments before we move off this topic?
Nope, I agree with what you're doing.
Yeah, I would be interested if there was any
possibility of one of the 20 sites that was maybe picked over and was not a problem, to consider putting up a historical marker at some of these sites, so at least people know where they are and what happened. Obviously, that's where we have a long way to go before we can do that, but it would be, I'd like to consider at some point doing an historical marker for
All
some.
right. Add that to our list. So, are we ready to move on to the next topic? I guess so. The Old Grange Hall, I have no update. No update on that. The last we heard was single family home. Next topic, planned demolitions on the Old State Hospital grounds. If you remember the last month, we had heard, actually I heard from the Conservation Commission, that's how I found out about it, is that the owners of the land, which the owners of the land is the Massachusetts Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. They own that property. We wanted to, I was trying to get in touch with them. I actually got a full report from them just yesterday, formal report. We had two questions for them. One was, what properties are they taking down and can we take photographs? And the second one is in one particular building, it's called the Chauncey Building. Is that one to come down because there was some interest in it down the road, maybe for housing. Just was a long shot, but that was the question. So I got this today. This whole document on the project. And I
Wow.
was able to go through it pretty quickly. There's a lot of stuff in here. First thing, if you put a building on the National Register, that's very, very nice, and it has some financial advantages to some people for some reasons, but it has absolutely zero protection. Keep in mind, the Westboro State Hospital on the Westboro side has been completely taken down, and that was all on the National Register. So this is for the 15 properties that are still remaining on the Northborough side of what used to be the Westboro State Hospital. So there's 15 properties. The plan is to tear all 15 buildings and structures down. That includes 4 buildings that are listed on the National Register. Hence the National Register has no teeth. So the document that I have has a lot of pictures of the building inside and outside, showing most of them. There's a good reason why they have to be demolished, because they're falling down. So that was one answer. And the second answer is regarding the particular building. That's planned to come down because they are planning to build a new maintenance and office building right exactly on that site, because that's for their purposes, that's a good site. I'm not sure what our role is. This was actually sent to the Northborough Historic Commission for comment. So I'm trying to scratch my head about what the comments could be. One comment has to do with the National Register has no teeth. The other thing is, I don't know if we have any jurisdiction whatsoever. And I've asked, because the way the process works for demolition in the town of Northborough, the demolition delay, which is when we would participate, gets activated when the building inspector has a request for a demolition permit. I just contacted the building inspector this afternoon, Bob. He got right back to me and he says it's state-owned property, so he has no involvement with it whatsoever. He is contacting a regional building inspector to see if that's consistent. So I haven't heard back on that note yet. So we may even not have any participation in the decision for all of the demolitions anyway. But as I was reading through it, there's one thing that caught my eye. And Mike, the timing on your discussion of archaeological sites was perfect. I read in what the proposal is that there does not appear to be any archaeological sites on the property. And then I read in the National Register description that was done in 1993 that there's a whole section written about all the possibility of all these archaeological sites that probably exist on the property. So, I'm trying to think through what our response could be. And right now, my one response would be, hey, if you're gonna tear all these buildings down, have you done a site analysis, a thorough site analysis for the archaeological different sites? So that's one thing is I'd like to push that button, see if we can have them do some work. Because the other thing is if you draw a straight, remember we put that trail marker up for the
Mhm.
Indian Native American Trail? If you draw a straight line from that marker to right between Little Chauncey Pond and Chauncey Pond, which is where the trail supposedly went, it goes right over that piece of property that they want to develop.
Mhm.
So it's another angle is trying to give them an incentive to do some studies. So I'm thinking out loud right now because I just read this thing this afternoon. It's not a project we're going to stop. I'm trying to understand, is there something before they go too far, we could ask them to do some work on? So that's what I have for that right now. And I'm looking for just, you guys getting this all cold. So if you guys come with ideas or thoughts, email me or just, I'm trying to find out exactly what, they're looking for comments. So I'm looking to press some
So-
comments.
Just out of curiosity, it seems like there's a lot of things kind of circling around some of these potential areas. Are there any designations of something as historically sensitive area? You know, meaning it hasn't really been specifically deemed significant, but there's a lot of things going on around that might make it sensitive. Is that such a thing?
Actually, when they wrote up the National Register information for them, which is like half of this document, it does mention that there's Cedar Swamp, which is on the Westboro Hopkinton line.
Yeah.
Is a phenomenal site for ancient North American natives. And if you go online, there's a lot of information about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Paleo Indians is what I think the term they're using. But it references in here that site's only 2 miles away. So in a sense, there's a reason, there's a reason to consider that places only 2 miles away have some significant sites. So does this have that site? Also have a site.
Yeah.
Is there any way to know the information we got from the state? Is there any way to know whether any of those sites are located there?
Well, I'm looking at the map right now and I need a magnifying glass because I can't see the detail. But I can
Use
tell
your
you.
phone. Use your
Hold
on.
phone. Your phone has it depends if you have a flip phone, it doesn't have a magnifying glass.
Oh, but
Try to take a picture of it and then magnify.
okay.
Right.
It's definitely, if it's not right there, it's pretty close. The majority of the sites we have in Northborough here, as I look at this map, is along the Marlborough Northborough border, and that extends along right into where Westborough intersects. So yeah, I would say it's pretty close. But I need a magnifying glass. I gotta.
All right, so at least that's one angle I could put in the comments. I also sent an email out to Verona's coming up a lot tonight. This whole document was sent to Verona Simon and then it was forwarded to us. I sent an email trying to get in touch with her to ask her what our role is on this thing. They're just looking for comments, they can throw in the trash. So I don't know what our role is. So there's a couple of loose ends here, and there's no date. Usually they say we need a response by a certain date, and there's no date.
Right.
But I know the demolition was planned for the spring. I remember that was the time frame.
Well, I guess a simple question would be: has there been what are those forms? The ENF forms, environmental notification form.
Yeah.
That's a state law requirement. If the money that's used to do this is involved in some kind of state funded or government funded stuff, and since it is or formerly was government state owned property,
Mhm.
I would think that there would need to be an ENF filed with Broner. And then she makes the call as to whether or not there's a need to do archaeological work.
Right.
So, I mean, one simple question would be, has she received an ENF from whoever's doing the work out there?
Okay,
Yeah.
because this thing is all written around something called a Massachusetts Historical Commission project notification form.
Mhm.
That's it. That's the ENF, the environmental notification form that she is required to get if it involves, like I said.
So
And
this is
so
more,
she has that, then she makes the call whether or not there needs to be archaeological surveys done.
so
out
this
there.
is a PNF, it's a project notification.
Okay, all right, that's probably the right term.
Yeah.
I misspoke.
Too many acronyms. So that's the whole purpose of this. But this
Yes.
talks nothing, there's nothing in here about environment.
So so somebody has filed that form with her.
This as of February 4th, 2021.
So somebody sent the form to her and
Yes.
has she responded to you? Do you have her response?
No. I
Okay.
just got this 2 days ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I think the process here is she now has the form. She has to then make the call as to whether or not there needs to be further work done.
Mhm.
So we should kind of, your comment to her, your discussion with her might be something along the line of, either when is she going to make the determination, or if there's anything we can do to help her. I don't think there's nothing we can do, or like to be involved in some way.
Well, I think, I've given up. Probably shouldn't say I've given up, but I'm not optimistic we can stop any demolition, especially with the photographs showing the condition.
No, I
But
understand,
I think getting that angle on the archaeological sites and seeing if that should be further addressed before they go too far with the demolition. That might be something that I think is a comment that we could make
sure.
if that's going to get done.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't think our goal is to stop the development. It's to protect whatever information might be out there before it's destroyed.
Right.
When the excavators and the bulldozers come in and they just make a giant pile, if there was some, encampment or, place out there that the Indians used frequently, then it's all kind of mishmashed and lost.
Yeah.
You just want to get that knowledge and then incorporate it in some way so you can have a better understanding of the history of the site.
Let me see if I can do this properly. Hold on a
There's
second.
something there, commemorate it with, some kind of plaque or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds good. Or consistent with a picture that we or somebody might paint that, this area that I'm talking about along the Marlboro-Northborough border, including, the cedar swamp that Norm referenced, was in fact a fairly active trail, hunting trail or otherwise, used by Native Americans, and kind of give notice that was in fact an important avenue of travel or something.
Oh, but I want to make sure I understand I do this properly. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and I'll have to find out if I'm doing it the right way. I would like input on any letter I send, right? But what I can't do is I can't send it to all you guys and have you guys all send it back to me, because we've in fact, we've all been trained on the open meeting law. So I don't want to go down that path. But I think if I do a subcommittee and I get 3 people on a subcommittee, I think then the 3 of us can get this thing pulled together properly. So is that ringing a bell? There's something about subcommittees that we can, because I want to be able to work with 2 other people and just iron out the best way to run this thing, get this letter to go. What I don't want to do is I don't want to wait a month from now
Okay.
to discuss this thing, because then it could conceivably on a month schedule, it could take 2 months before I get this letter out. I'd like to get this letter out in 3 weeks, 2 weeks. So I'd like to draft a letter and then have someone review it and see if I've missed some things or it should be worded differently, but I want to be able to work with someone one-on-one, two-on-one.
Mhm.
So do we think I can do that? I can find out if I can do it, but I think I can do that.
You might want to ask on that because I thought the number for the open meeting law violation was 3.
So 3 might be a violation, 2 would not be, is what you think?
I think the 3 is the number.
Okay. I'll find out about that.
If you establish a subcommittee, I mean, you probably still need to go through open meeting laws, right? But you could,
Well, that's, yeah.
but you could.
With 2, I don't think you do. That's why I think 3 kicks it into the open meeting, and then you have to have a recording of all that.
All right. Let me find out, and if it's 2, I will pick someone to help me. Leslie, I don't know what you're saying because you're muted.
Sorry, I've had a noisy cat in the room, so I've been trying to avoid you hearing meow.
Yes, that's
So
okay.
are you gonna volunteer somebody?
Yes,
Volunteer.
yes, I will. Someone probably with some interest in archaeological sites. He's not paying
He's talking
attention.
about you, Mike.
Oh, okay. I'm
Mike.
sorry. I got my
Magnifying
magnifying
out
glass.
already.
So I have my magnifying glass here and I'm looking at this map and there is a bunch of sites all around Little Chauncey Pond and over by that whole area there,
No,
which
that's
is
key.
right adjacent to the Worcester State Hospital area. So yeah, I mean, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of in that general vicinity. So yeah, I would think it looks like there's something going on there.
All right, I'll find
This
out if I can.
property,
Go ahead,
this
Bob.
property is, by the way, this property is on the east side of Lyman Street, right? Not the Chauncey Lake side.
Little Chauncey Pond is part of this property.
Right, but the property they want to demolish is across the street, isn't it?
It's any structure that's there. I think right as you go down the Little Chauncey Pond, there's a little brick building. I think that's coming down. But most of the
Oh,
other
okay.
stuff is on the other side. It's the
Okay, so it's
Power
on both
plant.
sides,
Yeah,
of the street.
both sides. But most, you're right, most of it is on the east
East
side
side.
of the street. Yeah,
Okay,
I'd say probably 99% of
yeah,
it.
I know the area.
Yeah, it looks like, I don't know, is that Lyman Street? Is that
Yeah.
Lyman Street?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It looks like Lyman Street sort of separates Northborough from Westborough. And the part of the Westborough State Hospital that's on the Northborough side would be the side where I guess you'd call it the power plant is.
Correct. The power plant's right on the line.
Yeah. And there's according to this, there's some sites all in that area. So,
So maybe they've already done their due diligence years ago, but all right, but we'll question them on that.
yeah. I mean, I can go back and look at the detailed reports that they have for these various sites, but there's a bunch of them there.
Well, if I can only work with one person, Michael, I'm going to work with you.
Yeah, okay, fine, sure, yeah.
And we can be very, on these kinds of letters, we can be pretty specific. So,
But I'm sure Brono's gonna, be aware of all of that.
yeah. All right.
She gave us this stuff, so
Yeah, exactly. I just,
she knows what's going on.
all right. So that's the hospital. So the action step on there is working on a letter. The next topic is representation on different committees. So the White Cliffs Committee has not met yet. So we have nothing to update on the White Cliffs. CPC, Les, you're our rep on CPC.
If anybody wants to wrestle it from me, they can, but I enjoy it. So I'm happy to continue.
All
But
right.
it's only fair if anybody else wants to, that I would step aside. So anybody want it?
Bruce is, I'm not sure if that's a no or a yes.
Ah,
That's I'm ambivalent about it. Let's put it that way.
I think you guys had a record though. We only had one meeting and you decided everything, CPC this year.
We've got another one coming up. We just had to postpone it. Yeah, it was quick.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. And then the last topic is the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Not yet.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. All right. I have two topics in new business. I was approached by the Unitarian Church. So the parish hall, so this is not the building with the steeple. This is the parish hall. They're finding that they're getting water into the basement and they need to put gutters on the parish hall. So it's pretty straightforward. They sent me the information. They're white gutters. They're going to blend in pretty good.
Is this the church next to where you live?
Yes. Yes, but it's not the church building. It's the building next door, which is the parish hall. The meeting house is the one with the steeple, and the parish hall is it's a function hall that they have.
Norm, I'm not sure, but I think that there's also the same thing going on the meeting house on that, over that new handicapped access ramp to try to prevent rain coming off the roof and landing on that handicapped access ramp.
The only thing I got from Ed Harlow was in regards to the parish hall. So that's the only information that I have right now. But this is the basic question. The way everything is worded for the Historic District Commission, in our responsibilities for a historic district, if there is a change made from the view from the street, we're supposed to get involved. The question was, if we're just putting gutters on the building, do we need to do that formal process? That's the question. That's what I want to talk about tonight. Because if we feel we have to do the formal practice, then next month we'll bring them in with the formal practice. Maybe, Brian, maybe next month there'd be more information than what I have right now. So I spent some time today actually going over the state documents that explicitly explains what our responsibility is. And let me see if I saved it. That's not that one. So I'm going to read to you right out of the state document. It's section 6 of chapter 40C, and I'm going to read the second sentence. No building or structure within a historic district shall be constructed or altered in any way that affects exterior architectural features unless the commission shall first have issued a certificate of appropriateness, either that or a certificate of non-applicability or a certificate of hardship with respect to such construction of alteration. I was looking online at the document, the state document, to see if this falls under maintenance. It really doesn't. I was looking for other angles. It really doesn't. It's pointing that we really should do the formal approach to it. And even if it doesn't apply, we would have to do the formal approach to it. So I kind of answered my own question, but I just want you to know what's going on. I told the representative from the Unitarian Church that we would discuss it tonight and I would do some homework. So what are your thoughts? The question is, should we just say, put the gutters on, we're doing fine, or should we go through the formal process? That's what I'm looking for the discussion.
I think we should do due diligence on it. It may be all of a 5-minute meeting, but we should probably do due diligence. Which is, I'm agreeing with you. That's probably the case, but just we have to recognize it's not a big burden. They have to do some paperwork, but the town has to notify all the abutters that this is occurring. So the town will have to send out, I think it's on the order, the abutters is probably 15 letters to notify the abutters that this is happening, which is no big deal. They do it all the time. So there's just some work involved. But
is this an urgent condition? Is that, if not doing this before the winter's over, contribute to some kind of slip and fall hazard that needs to get done like immediately? Or
there was no, I didn't get the sense of urgency like that. Brian Swanson, do you have a feeling?
I know there were some issues with getting water into the basement
Yeah,
also that they're hoping will be cured by this, which would have some urgency to it.
I mean, is there an urgency factor that you can bypass for emergency, to get this done before the damage is done? While you're waiting to permit something, the thing, fills up with water or has somebody falls and hurts themselves. Is there a provision that allows you to do stuff without going through the formal process as a result of that? Seems like it would be.
let me take a peek, okay? Let me just take a peek if something like that pops up.
We lost Millie.
Oh, she said she had to leave at around 8 o'clock.
Okay, alrighty.
Actually, this clock is wrong. So at 8:07, yeah, so she had to leave at 8:07. Let's see. I'm trying to find severability. What's this one? No, it's some kind of legal thing. Don't want to go on that path. So it could be, that would be considered a hardship. Well, see, even under hardship, they want us to go through the formality.
And I think
There's no like,
applies a little bit more to, I recall, I think hardship is more like, listen, we can't stick to the architectural, intent here, but we can't afford it, or, it costs too much, and, please let us do what we want to do here. I think that's what the hardship is.
That's okay. So let me see, take a quick peek here.
I mean, I think it's one of those things where I'm not concerned that anybody's going to go off and put something egregious on there. At the same time, I wouldn't want anything to come back and bite.
Yeah, and I'm afraid of, I'm a little concerned about bending the rules. Yeah, I'm not comfortable setting a precedent. I'll get back to Ed, like my contact, and say, look, we can get this thing all resolved a month from now. Let me know if you're in a critical situation or not. But right now, that's, and so you could put it on, we could be, this is pretty straightforward, so we can get it done our next meeting, and the next day you put the gutters up.
Yeah.
I don't see it as a controversial topic. I just feel that,
Yeah.
I just want to do the procedure properly.
Norm, you mentioned that there was a maintenance exemption, but that you felt or you couldn't find anything specific that said that gutters were maintenance.
Correct. Maintenance is maintenance, repair, or replacement. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed to prevent the ordinary maintenance, repair, or replacement of any exterior architectural feature within an historic district which does not involve a change in design, material, color, or the outward appearance thereof. So we're not doing any of those things.
Yeah, no, I see that. Okay,
I
thought.
but I'm glad you brought it up, because
Is there anyone that you can boil it up to? Is there for a ruling? Because to me, gutters are maintenance.
cleaning the gutters would be maintenance.
Okay,
Installing new ones, I don't know if it's maintenance.
so there's no gutters up there now. It's brand new. Okay,
Yeah, I
If there
agree.
were, it would be, but the way I read the law, the way I read the bylaw is, even if they were replacing, they should run it by us, and we should go through this procedure.
okay.
So I'll let Ed know, and hopefully this is not an issue. We'll just,
And push come to shove, right? If it was that critical, we could always have a, you know, a special meeting, you know,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
between the monthly one, although there's still a lead time for notifying of butters, but, you know,
Yeah, I think it's 21 days.
so we'd be up against the regular monthly meeting anyway, probably by the time that.
I'll run it by him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But I needed to have this discussion. I appreciate your input. All right. I need to remind everybody that you did your open meeting testing and your conflict of interest testing, and make sure you get that done. And that was lots of fun. Took a while to pass the test, but eventually passed. And the only other thing we had in the mail is I got a notice that the nomination documents for the Historical Register for 35 Whitney Street has been received by the Mass Historical Commission. Yeah, it's moving along.
Good.
Any
Do you get,
things
do you get to
wanna
put a
talk-
cool, do you have to go put a cool sign out front?
If you want to buy it,
I thought they did that for free. The guy did the bronze plaques for free.
yeah, he did. He did. If I was a nonprofit, am I
Oh,
a nonprofit? I'm not making any money. I'm unemployed, retired. Take advantage of it. Yeah, so I already looked into that. I'm not a nonprofit, so we'll see.
Norm,
Anything
can I
else?
ask you, how many, you're talking about the Historic District Commission, Historic District. How many buildings are there in that? I know that, you know, the churches, but there are other buildings involved, other houses, right?
Yeah, I think there's 8 buildings. There's 8 buildings, the old cemetery, and plus the militia grounds, which is right, yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So it's my house and the 3 next door, the church, and then the Allen Parsonage, and then the building that is right at the corner of Church and Pleasant, which was a church in its own right back in the day. It's Kathy Pierce's old house, the yellow house on the corner. I think that covers all the buildings. And then, of course, there's a separate district, which is Marie Niebuhr's house, the Parsons house on Whitney Street. All right. Anything else? Anybody want to leave?
Yeah.
You got a question mark on next meeting date?
Oh, thank you. In a normal year, I would not be holding it on March 17th. I'll tell you that much. But do we want to move it a week earlier or a week later or a day earlier or a day later or keep it the same?
I mean, it's not just up to us, it's up to the town hall, because if the town hall's not open, then we shouldn't be meeting.
No, and it's not at all. It's St.
Okay.
Patrick's Day. If you have a spouse that's 100% Irish, you are going to a pub on St. Patrick's Day. But that won't be happening this year.
Right, no, so I'm
Us days,
saying
yeah.
for us, no, so you're just asking, yeah, okay. I'm good with it.
16th, 17th, 18th, it's all the same to me.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. I don't want to move it a week earlier because if we have to do that thing with, I don't want to push that.
Becca, have any big plans for?
But she was a fill-in tonight.
Oh, okay.
She was the stopgap.
I have no plans for St. Patrick's Day. So
Thank you.
feel free to meet.
All right. We'll keep it that day then. It seems we can work with it. All right. Thank you for reminding me, Bruce.
The busier as a contact tracer, the busier I keep people, the fewer people will have to contact trace, so.
Oh, there you go. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Move that we adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Brian.
Second?
Second by Mr. Smith. Do the roll call. Do the roll call. You get Mike,
agree.
Leslie,
Absolutely.
Bruce,
Yep.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Swanson,
Yes.
and Bob, who can't vote, and myself, yes. So I think we're good to go. Hey, have a good month. We'll see you on the